Welcome back to the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. It is a Friday morning, June the 28th, 2024. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BOL, alongside site publisher Tim Watts. And coming up in just a little bit, we'll go Tri-Box on this Friday morning. A big Friday on the Alabama recruiting front. We'll be joined by Jospeh Hastings, our recruiting analyst for us there at BOL as well. But Tim Watts, again, a couple of decisions coming later today on the defensive side of the ball that certainly has some implications where Alabama's 2025 recruiting class is concerned.
Yeah, Dejon Lee and Joshua Sharma both come in today. They're two of the guys that we heard, again, coming off the plane very early in the process. We heard those two with Jackson Lloyd. Abdul Sharma had heavy connections to Kalen DeBoer and Courtney Morgan. I think a lot of the talk early on was how will they recruit? Where will they recruit? That discussion of where this, how involved will they be in the West Coast? Well, very much involved in the West Coast already with a few commitments and, looking for a few more this afternoon. Dijon's obviously a big one because he could be the first 5-star ranking guy that Kalen DeBoer commits, which is also a question. Can he get 5 stars? A lot of questions. Kalen DeBoer had to take like that. What's that? LSAT. He had to take that test for not just Alabama fans, but for every fan base. He had to answer these 2,000 questions, but he's doing pretty well so far.
He is. And Dejon Lee, if he does pull the trigger for the Alabama Crimson Tide, it's not just a 5-star. That's a 5-star that, say, a Georgia and the rest of the country obviously was heavily involved with. And teams really, pulled out all the breaks to try to land this guy. So should he land with Alabama, I think that's a statement in and of itself.
Well, you're getting a guy that's choosing them. Washington. Obviously, there's some familiarity, with that university from when Kalen DeBoer was there. But Texas, Georgia was the one that really battled. Having the former USC defensive back coach at Georgia, sort of got them involved. And then obviously, Alabama had that connection coming here, so it's had a decidedly Southern flavor through his whole career, just the whole recruitment. I mean, Texas was in there too. Haven't been mentioned as much as Bama, Georgia. As we've discussed at one point, Georgia was supposed to be the heavy lean in March or April. We never really felt it was that way. We always felt Alabama did a good job. Not that Georgia didn't do a good job; they did a terrific job as well, just to be in the top 2 or 3 for a guy like this. But yeah, it checks a lot of questions, and also, you come from a program with Nick Saban where 5-star DBs were, even the 4 stars are called 5 stars. They ended up so good. So you kind of expect that, or you want to see that tradition is going to continue. And Dijon could help that continue.
Strong Southern Cal flavor, man, to this secondary. When you talk about guys that are already in the program, Damani Jackson transfers over from USC. Zabian Brown comes in. Chuck McDonald commits here recently. And then the potential, the average to add Dejon Lee. It's just very interesting. I guess where the West Coast kids are concerned, it's not just Alabama either. It seems like more and more of the kids from out West are wanting to get into the SEC, including a big defensive lineman who's set to make a decision later today as well, and Josiah Sharma.
Yeah, I think, when it comes, college is about experimenting, right? It's about seeing different stuff. So when we've seen plenty of kids that wanted to leave the state, when I first got into this business, there was a ton of Southern kids that would end up at USC. There would be USC kids, California kids that would end up at Miami, kind of just swapping coast. But it's a new thing. So we've seen it. We saw that with Najee Harris. He's like, I've been here my whole life. I don't want to be here anymore. What's the opposite, Michigan or Alabama? So he found the polar opposite. But yeah, Sharma's another one. He's a big guy. I mean, a lot of the feedback we're getting late is Texas. Texas did a good job. They made it a battle. There's a long-standing relationship with Alabama. Courtney Morgan, again, knowing that family, Kalen DeBoer, having him committed at Washington. But that guy, stock really blew up. They had him committed. He was a 3-star. Not a lot of people knew about him. They obviously knew how good he was. He was one of the first offers for Kalen DeBoer when he got to Alabama, but a really big player, big guy, 6'5", 320 pounds. We think Texas right now, I mean, it's a long day till signing day for everybody. Andrew Bone loves to say it. By the way, Andrew Bone, good luck with your travels. He's got a wedding this weekend. We didn't ask him from the show, We did. We didn't have an ego problem where one of us had to go. He's just traveling to Atlanta, so good luck to him. But yeah, I mean, you still got to finish all these, and I imagine Alabama would stay in this one way or the other. And on the flip side, if he was to choose Alabama, I think Texas would keep recruiting Josiah Sharma because their media has covered that well as he is a top target, he is a top priority. They lost Bo Davis, they needed defensive linemen. I mean, you got to they went all in there trying to make sure that they could get Josiah Sharma, who I think they probably will today.
Yeah, it's just positional value too, man. Even if you're a low 3-star defensive tackle early on in this process, you had the very real potential to go to a high 4-star, maybe beyond that, Tim. It feels like because there's just not enough of those guys out there. Just look at the late portal here in April that we just had. Look at some of these defensive line transfers that frankly were really just rotational guys. They weren't superstars, but look at some of the money that some of those guys were able to sort of bring into their coffers in the transfer portal market where the defensive line position is concerned. And I guess Texas, like Alabama can too. I think this is a little bit underplayed for Alabama. I think a lot of people look at Alabama and the NFL pipeline with defensive linemen of late and think, hasn't been as much, but they continuously sent guys to the league. We've seen it most recently with Justin Aboigbe, Christian Barmore. Now look, Deron Payne, John Allen, those kind of guys. Yeah, I mean, they were top 5, top 10 picks, but Alabama's been very consistent in that regard. And Texas, I guess to its benefit, it just sent a couple of guys to the National Football League in this most recent draft class.
Yeah, and before we continue, we want to ask you guys to like and subscribe. Y'all did a great job passing 9,000, closing in on 10,000. If you like the content, just give us a thumbs up, give us a subscription. We'd love to have you, and we appreciate y'all that show up for the live shows. Y'all are beating us here, by the way.
Love it.
We come in and there's like 50 of you waiting on us, so we're trying to be here on tide and roll tide to everybody. And thank you for showing up. But the thing about that makes defensive tackle tough in the NIL era to me is that it's such a developmental position, right? Because you're not getting many true freshman defensive tackle walking in and taking over. So it's a developmental league. It's a developmental position. And so you've got basically a year or whatever to get acclimated to college. So you're paying them to like teach them. So and then you get to the portal, you get them to the point you're ready for them to be good, and you're battling again for the defensive lineman in the portal. So it's a tough position to value because the freshman value is less, in my opinion. If you pay $300,000 for a freshman defensive tackle, your $200,000 wide receiver, your receiver's probably going to have more of an impact freshman year. But come junior year, it's hard to replace what a lot of those defensive tackles eventually grow into.
Yeah, and that's why I think they get even more on the transfer portal market a
Sure.
couple of
Yeah.
years in because the previous school had invested all the practice and all the development and some of the snaps into these
Absolutely.
guys, and then they hit the market, and especially in that April window, it was crazy.
You're paying to train anybody that's developmental, right? So if you get
Yeah,
a quarterback and you're giving him a big NIL and he doesn't play right away, you're training him, you're giving him your free food, free weights, all the training. So if he leaves when he's good, that red shirt freshman year, I mean, that's just the risk you take. I don't know how they manage the NIL, most of them. I think it's value, but I know with Texas, they really wanted some defensive linemen, weren't in the middle for a lot. Bama, and another thing with defensive linemen, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, they're just the value. You don't see a lot of 5-stars, so a lot of the value will come from the 3 and 4-star ranks.
Tim, let's talk about where this class sits right now. 19 commitments for the Alabama Crimson Tide where the 2025 cycle is concerned. By my count, 14 of those 19 are 4-star prospects as it sits right now with the industry comparison rankings. Just your thoughts about, again, this momentum that Kalen DeBoer and this staff have been able to generate. Certainly hopeful that they'll be able to build on that with perhaps Dejon Lee, a 5-star coming up later this afternoon, making his decision. Just some overall thoughts on what they've been able to do to this point.
Yeah, I think they're just, it's kind of been like a positional thing where we saw a lot of, it started with the inside linebackers, obviously. Kane Womack did a fantastic job. We knew he identified 8 guys that he wanted to he really liked and had a high evaluation on. He ended up getting commitments from 4 of those 8. Guy like Ty Jackson's still out there. He was certainly among the 8, and some of the other ones went other places, but certainly did a good job. And then you kind of saw offensive line dominoes fall. You've seen some sprinkles in with other positions. I'm on the record. The rankings, we don't know the rankings. Alabama could have 10 5-stars committed. They don't, but they could have, because the 5-stars aren't named. Senior year hasn't been played. That's going to be a big part of this. There's going to be a lot of evaluation of what people do, and we've seen massive growth potential. Christian Barmore is one that jumped up from nowhere to a 4-star guy, highly recruited as a senior. People change positions and all that, but overall as a staff, what they've done, I think, has been impressive. You start looking like, where do you need a player? Where do you need a player? You need a tight end. You start trying to get to the nitty gritty. You need a tight end in this class, and they're still recruiting some. You want to, probably want a big nose guard type. You're still recruiting some. Well, hello, Jermaine Baker from Japan. That
Man,
is
what
one
is
we
it already
definitely.
tomorrow over there, Tim, or is that yesterday? I'm not sure.
Yes. Who won the Super Bowl? That's how far ahead he is. Who's winning the next Super Bowl? But
Oh
thank
man.
you for joining us, Jermaine. But yeah,
Yeah.
they did what they wanted to do to get the guys into, the dominoes of watching these. And it's been hard because you get to these camps in June. The camps in June for Nick Saban were mainly come earn an offer, but there's not that many 2025s that have time to come earn an offer like you would have expected. Most of it's 26 and 27. So these evaluations and everything going on, when you hit the senior season, there's going to be guys not as good as you thought they were. There's going to be guys that were a ton better than you thought they were. So these boards are going to change, not just for Alabama, but for a lot of people. Opinions are going to change. This senior season is important when it comes to rankings.
And we've got all the coverage for you right there at BamaOnLine.com. As you can see, just a couple hours ago, decision day. Will Alabama land first 5-star of 2025 class? That in reference, of course, to the upcoming reveal by Dejon Lee, the 5-star corner from Mission Viejo High School out in Southern California. That's set to take place this afternoon at 1:30 Central, as Tim outlined for us. Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Texas A&M, SC, Washington, all involved intensely in this recruitment. And boy, you talk about Dejon Lee specifically as we get ready to join Jospeh Hastings here in just a second. Length comes to mind. Athleticism comes to mind. Zay Mincy maybe a little bit comes to mind. But boy, I think versatility too, Tim, when you look at a guy like Dejon Lee and what he's capable of doing for you down the road.
Yeah, and don't forget, if it is Alabama, come back 1:30 to the YouTube page. We'll be here rocking and rolling. We'll have an evaluation and our thoughts, our deep thoughts on what we think this commitment means. Yeah, I mean, with Dijon, the thing that I like is that he's different than the others. I mean, he's 6'3" plus. Again, this isn't a guy that's 6'2" and exaggerated to 6'3". He's measured feet to head, 6'3" plus. He's long and rangy. I don't think he's necessarily like in a bubble with boundary corner, slot receiver, free safety. I think he's all of them. I think he's the kind of guy with that long range. He's not going to be, you see those 4'4" guys tend to be shorter. He's going to be a little bit longer from that angle, but his closing speed and his length, his arms, his arms make up for a lot. When you look at a defensive back with long arms, they get that extra half step of a mistake. And when a defensive back's burned, it's often the half step. It's a false step this way, and then the inside. But you make up a lot of ground with long strides and long arms, and he's got that. And the thing that I wish you saw more of was his punt returns, his kick returns, because on what you saw there is kind of, to me, what displayed the best part of his ability, because he's showing you his hips. He's showing you his change of pace. His defensive back clips are great, but he's kind of like in his zone on his man. But on the returns, you're seeing his hips and his change of pace and his acceleration. That's what impressed me the most.
Tell you who impresses me all the time is this guy, Jospeh Hastings. Now, as we go try box here on the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com, a reminder as we bring JoJo in, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel as of yet, now is the time to do that. Hit the subscribe button, turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops right here on the YouTube home for BOL. And you certainly want to give JoJo a thumbs up. There he
Let's do it.
is,
Yeah, let's
Joseph
do it.
Hastings. Joseph, how are you doing on this Friday morning? Big Friday for Alabama fans.
I'm doing exceptional, Travis. Tim, see you doing well as too, and we're getting ready to get the show on the road.
Yeah, we haven't been able to really talk to you, I guess, as much about maybe Dawson Merritt and, the decision he made and kind of, things get lost so quickly in this news cycle, guys. Things happen so much. There's so much news on a 24/7 basis, 365 days out of the year. Um, just how that sort of came into this situation and this little bit of a defensive role that Alabama looks to be on.
Yeah, definitely. The commitment for Dawson Merritt was it was a pretty impressive one, and you have to go back to a theme that we continue to talk about, just the relationships that are established early, going back over to that Washington regime. He got offered back in October 2023, and with a prospect who is as high profile as he is, a top 100 player, you would think that that wouldn't be one of his early offers. It was. Washington was his fifth offer at that point in his recruitment, and it kind of took off after that with how well of a junior year that he had. And he really kind of kept on coming back to that relationship with Kalen DeBoer and Courtney Morgan and the trust and belief that they had in him initially. And then Christian Robinson coming in a few months ago and what he was able to do, not only building a bond with Dawson, but also his family as well. They just felt very comfortable with Coach Robinson. They visited a couple of times in the spring. I think that was a kind of a sneaky aspect of this recruitment here, is that they got him in for that unofficial in April instead of the previously scheduled official visit. And then we're able to get that official visit the June 7th through 9th weekend, a couple months after he took his Nebraska official. And Alabama prioritized them, and they got their first Wolf commitment. I know that's been a talking point, seeing who was going to be the first one that they were able to land. We know Justin Hill's got his commitment coming up on July 3rd, but this was just a really impressive all-around recruiting effort by the Bama staff. And Andrew Bone posted a note about Dawson and his future Alabama visit plans, and what kind of leader he could potentially be in this 2025 class. He posted that on the BOL roundtable, so check that out if you haven't. But just an impressive win by this staff.
Yeah, the roundtable, just a great place, the place to get all of your Alabama Crimson Tide recruiting and team news from guys like this right here: Tim Watts, Joseph Hastings, Andrew Bone, Charlie Potter. Yeah, we got you covered right there at BamaOnLine.com. In fact, Tim, with a nugget last night as it relates to Josiah Sharma, the big defensive lineman from the state of California, set to also announce his commitment later today. And I know, Joseph, you've had interaction with the family. I believe you spoke with Josiah's mother here recently. Mm-hmm. Were you able to take away much from that conversation, or was it kind of close to the vest? Any hints or indications that maybe came from that?
It was very close to the vest. They're really kind of keeping things, under wraps. And, the plan, last I heard, is not to inform any schools of the upcoming decision, for it to be a surprise. And look, Alabama, the coaching staff has done just pretty much everything that you could do, in this recruitment here, from, him when he was a low-rated 3-star back in May last year, and then getting his commitment on January 1st of this year with the Washington staff. Offering him shortly after he, after they got to Alabama in late January, getting him on campus back-to-back months in the spring, and then for the official visit this past weekend. I mean, the recruiting effort has been there for sure. We're going to see how things play out this afternoon and where he ends up, committing to. But Texas also came in too, and they prioritized him, and we're able to get him on campus. So we'll see how things are going there. I know defensive line recruiting, especially nowadays in this era of NIL and just everything that's changing in the college football landscape. Defensive linemen, there's a lot more parity at the position group. You'll see some top guys going to South Carolina, to Missouri, like we saw last year with Dylan Stewart and Williams and Wannery. So that's kind of an interesting position group always to follow. But we'll see how things play out with Sharma tonight. But I couldn't get a good read earlier this week when I spoke with his mom.
Tim, the defensive line class as it sits right now for Alabama, I know you're high on London Simmons, who committed here not so long ago. Antonio Coleman, obviously a big piece to all this as well. Where do you see this with Sharma, without Sharma, kind of how it might play out down the road?
Yeah, I think no matter what, I don't think this recruitment was over today, leading into this. I think you would like to have him on the board, and you'd like to have Sharma going into it. London Simmons, now, let me be clear. I know the Alabama staff loved him. I haven't seen him 40 pounds lighter. I like to see myself 40 pounds lighter, but I have not seen London yet 40 pounds lighter. But I am looking forward to seeing that this year. He came in, he camped, they saw him in person. Totally different. I thought he looked pretty good at 340 pounds. You remind me of Tim Keenan, a better version, actually. But to drop that, they've got Antonio Coleman committed. They've got some guys. I mean, this was not expected to be a big defensive line group. Kane Womack loved the defensive line room when he came here, when he got to Alabama. I think he was pleasantly surprised at it. It's got some depth. We've talked about a lot of those guys. So they're expected to sign a couple of guys. There's a little confusion with Bama fans with some of the new terminology. Like Joseph said earlier, the Wolf is a different linebacker position than inside linebacker. It's basically outside. So they still want some interior guys, which London Simmons would be. And then they want, you got the bandit position where they're recruiting guys like Damian Shanklin and a few of those guys out there. So they've still got guys like Floyd, our guy Floyd Bucard. He's a guy Miami's going to battle for. He's from Canada, was in Alabama, went to Miami, took his official visit. So they got guys they're going to battle for. But I will tell you, if there's any position that jumps at you as a senior, it's defensive lineman. We've seen as much growth from defensive linemen. We've seen body types change. Obviously, London Simmons, we've seen him emerge, Christian Barmore. And I think anybody you ask in this business, if you ask the guys that run their sites that cover recruiting for any team, they'll be able to tell you a couple of defensive linemen that jumped out as a senior and emerged. So I think there's going to be a lot of evaluation still going on, but there's still targets and there's not a lot of pressure to add guys.
Joseph, this may fall in line with London Simmons, but wanted to ask both you guys about a commitment right now that you see for Alabama that's maybe a little bit undervalued. Maybe when we talk about down the road and these rankings continue to update, who would be that guy to make the jump for you? I mean, I see Latsier Brooks still sitting there with 3 stars next to his name. Maybe I took your guy, but yeah, that one comes to mind pretty quickly, I guess.
Yeah, he's the first one that comes to mind, and it's kind of, I was debating about that because he's a borderline top 100 prospect on On3, number 15 wide receiver. So I think On3 is closer than anyone else right now. But the recruiting services will come, will be able to circle back to him and probably get him properly adjusted over these next few updates. But I think the biggest thing with him is that we just haven't been able to see him that much. He does do some 7-on-7s with his team and, some local camps, but he really hasn't been on the national radar too much. Doesn't promote himself, too much either. His recruitment was very low key, so to speak. The whole development between him and Alabama was kind of like last minute on, just in terms of that interest and, him taking visits and, expressing that interest in Alabama. Everything's kind of been low key in his recruitment. And as a result, his rankings may have suffered initially early on. But as I like to tell people all the time, the rankings aren't finalized until January / February. So that, there's a lot of time left to go, a senior season to be played. Who knows if there's an all-star game appearance, coming up for him in January where he can be able to showcase his skill set on the national stage. So it would definitely be Latsier right now, but, there's a couple other good candidates out there. I think Mal Waldrop would be another one too, with a strong senior season.
What about you, Tim, in that regard, as far as maybe either an undervalued guy or just a guy you really, really like, regardless of ranking, wherever he sits in this class, a guy that you feel like is really going to be an impactful player for Alabama?
Yeah, I love Derek Smith. I think he's a really good safety prospect. And obviously, Jackson Lloyd, that's kind of my guys on each side of the ball. Derek's that athlete. He's almost, if you like, he's kind of like that 2-3 in the NBA that I love, that position I love, where he's a guy that can play either side of the ball. I wouldn't rule cornerback off the table if he wanted to play that. Very good athlete, very quiet. And then, of course, Jackson, 3-sport star athlete, crushing it and everything. And, we've seen some of these guys rise. Now, some of them are higher on some rankings than ours. And some are higher here than they are other places. But eventually it all catches up, at the end, like I always say.
Hey, it doesn't just end with today either, by the way, as we know. Some potential for more fireworks with the 4th of July holiday upon us, Tim and Joseph. Some some potential there as far as announcements that we could still hear in the coming days when, you think about the likes of maybe AK Deer or Caleb Cunningham or Ty Haywood, guys like that, Tim. Give us a bit of a whet our appetite a little bit with what could still come from the likes of those elite prospects.
I think we think they're going to commit, decision date set. Nothing like written in stone. Justin Hill's the third, I believe, July 3rd. He's locked it in. So we know when he's making his announcement, Alabama and Ohio State's dead in the mix. It's a battle. Just depends who you ask. Maybe it depends on every day how he feels. I know he loves the Alabama staff. I know he's close to the Ohio State staff. Christian Robinson's did a fantastic job there. Other guys like AK Deer, Caleb Cunningham, Ty Haywood, they're guys we're watching, but they don't have a date. Now, we've seen guys that don't have a date, decide while we were, going to get dinner in the middle of the night. But we've also seen it wait to July and August and September. You go back to Suntane Perkins, who we thought was committing to Alabama, and that was Pete's infamous elephant tweet, and he never actually committed to Alabama. And we've seen other ones like that before that happened. So, we think there's some coming in July. And if you notice the trend around the nation, July is going to be a hot month because if you think about it, most of these guys took 4 or 5 visits. And then also there's the, follow your friend theory where everybody's committing. I want to get a commitment. I want to get a Hayes Fawcett edit. I want to get a 5-minute short on my video commitment and celebrate online. So I think there's sort of that gang effect where a lot of these guys are kind of like doing what their friends do and want the attention. And I don't blame them. But then again, I think once the season starts, we'll be back covering a lot of the same guys.
Yeah, Joseph. So do you get the sense that maybe this cold summer is literally going to chill down a little bit here coming up, or do you still see it remaining pretty warm to hot?
I'm just hoping all the guys that we mentioned commit, if they are going to commit, August 16th or later, because we know Bone has his 19.5 over line that he's hoping comes to fruition.
Mid-August,
so I'm just hoping it's after mid-August. But yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out. Obviously, July 4th is a date we always look for in terms of a potential surprise, just because of it being the 4th of July, the fireworks. We all know that's the case, and then some other commitments coming later that month too. Are expected to be. I know Derek Meadows has talked about potentially committing in July too. Cunningham's mentioned it, like Tim said. Still waiting for what could potentially happen with AK Deer. He's already committed, so it wouldn't be a commitment date, so to speak, unless he decommits first, if that was to happen. And then Ty Haywood hasn't mentioned anything either. So just kind of wait and see right now. It's always nice when you have, the lead up, where with a Dejon Lee, a Josiah Sharma, a Justin Hill, where the date, the time, that kind of deal, and you kind of get ready for it. But, there's always a possibility for some surprises too. Like a Keelan Russell earlier this month, or some other guys that joined the class. So either way, Bama recruiting is has tremendous momentum right now. With everything going on, the staff has done exceptional this month with the official visits, and they head into that dead period, this quiet time, so to speak, with a lot of momentum.
Yeah, and never been a better time to subscribe to our YouTube channel right here for BamaOnLine.com. If you haven't subscribed as of yet, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on those notifications. You get all of our YouTube content as it drops. Hit us with a thumbs up, a like if you can. That would help us out tremendously as well. All of this action in the month of June and heading into July. Wanted to ask you, Tim, conference commissioners recently met and discussed the possibility for a June signing date. Do you think with 19, 20, 21 commitments that we're seeing for places like Alabama and elsewhere in college football, do you think that's something college coaches would like, or would it even matter? Because players still have freedom of movement. I guess even if they sign, with the way players are able to move right now, I'm not sure how effective that would be.
Yeah, I don't think there's a clear answer on that. I don't think it's necessarily fair to the players because, they're going to want to watch how these teams do each year. If you're committed to a school and the coach starts out 0-5 and he's on the hot seat, obviously you need that time to prepare to look at other schools just in case you don't like the new coach, if there's a change. I think it'd be ideal for college coaches because there'd be 19 or 20 guys off the board you don't have to worry about. But then again, you got the portal. If they ask out in October, won't they be out in December? anyway. So, I don't think there's like a clear cut answer, when's the best time. I still think they would get out of it if they wanted to. So I think you
Yeah.
just leave it in December. I think you limit the portal window one time a year. I think you leave this to December, and then you move on from it. They keep adding stuff. They need to be taken away. We don't need any more addition. Y'all have added enough. You're like somebody's wife shopping and she's just throwing crap in the cart, and then you get up there and the bill's really big.
But it's Costco, so it's cheaper.
I'm not talking about
it's
my
cheaper,
wife,
Tim.
in case she's watching. I'm definitely not talking about my wife. But hey,
it's like Tim when he goes cargo shopping. He starts out with one pair, and the next thing you know, damn, there's
but I get 3 pairs every 7 years. 3 pairs,
total,
7 years. That nails it. I mean,
like a total of 300 pockets on those 12 cargo shorts.
Almost indestructible.
Hey, guys, we're going to have a busy afternoon, as we know, right there at BamaOnLine.com. A couple of these commitments, Dejon Lee, Josiah Sharma set to pop later today. So you're going to want to keep it locked to us right there at BamaOnLine.com. The roundtable, our premium message board, stays hot, and it'll be even hotter in this late June heat coming up later this afternoon. So hang out with us there on the roundtable. These guys are going to have you covered along with Andrew Bone. Tim, anything else before we get out of here?
No, that's it. That's it. I think you're seeing what the recruiting's come. We're at the very end of July. What we got? 2 days left in June. So been a fruitful June. It's been an exciting June. July, I think we'll hear more dates trickle out here at some point. We've seen guys move up their windows from September 1 to mid-August. We're hearing them now going in July. So I think a lot of that's going on. I mean, if I know where I'm going, I wouldn't mind getting out of the way, enjoying my summer before I have to go into those August workouts. And if they're in the South, good luck to them, boys. Hope your coach is doing it at 5 a.m. or 7 p.m. It is hot.
Already in those summer workouts, probably doing those at 6 a.m. to try to get out of this heat, get under that heat. But Jospeh Hastings can stand the heat. Joseph, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, nothing else to add. Just keep it locked in with BamaOnLine.com. As Tim mentioned, I do expect some dates to start to trickle out soon here in that July month. Could be a busy month. We'll see how things play out. But we're gonna have all the coverage that you need. We're gonna have some great discussions too. This is just kind of a little bit of a preview of what goes on the BOL roundtable. So be sure to keep it locked in.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to the big crowd that turned out once again for the live edition of the program. Of course, the show archives. So if you don't catch it live, you're fine right there. You can find it on our YouTube home. You'll find everything we do right there on the YouTube channel for BOL. For Tim Watts, Jospeh Hastings, Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us here on the YouTube channel for BamaOnLine.com. And until next time, so long, everybody.